Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Living Well or Trying to. I'm your host, Janet. Today's episode is the second part of a two-part conversation I had with Kari from Food Friends. If you haven't already, check out that first part released last week. This week, we get even more into our conversation around eating seasonally, summer produce, hosting dinner parties, and ways to cook healthy meals for yourself and your family. I hope you enjoy.
Yeah.
But
But
I
that's a
li-
good guess though. Like
yeah.
I'm sure that you go get a good pie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But
Yeah.
I loved your tips on like thinking ahead of time because I think that whether it's the summer time or sometimes during the holidays, like hosting in general can get very stressful and hard, especially if you have like so many things going on. So being able to break it down to say, hey, there are some things you can actually do a few days before to make the day of less stressful. And then also it's totally fair and maybe even better for the guest experience if other people, if you like break things down and have someone else bring one thing and someone else take care of something else. And so you're not, as a single host, doing everything yourself.
Yeah, and it depends on what kind of also on what kind of cook you are too. So
Yeah.
if you're someone who really wants to like be the host of everything, that's great. But you want your guests to really feel like a guest. They don't
Mm.
have to bring something, but people are always asking to bring something. They
Right,
really want
right.
to. And so
Yeah.
you're the leader in that space. And
Mm.
so to just think about that from, I will also share I did just host a dinner party and I was having really old dear friends over and I was excited to spend time with them. And I was also like really into researching recipes. And so I had like 5 recipes that I wanted to try.
Yeah.
And I really made the mistake of like biting off too much work
Yeah,
for
yeah.
that dinner party. And so I just felt so scattered. It's like
Mm.
I was still cooking when they arrived. I couldn't really hang out with them.
Mm.
And then all the recipes were new. Like nothing was, I loved what you said. Like you just kind of cook intuitively, like you cook what you already like to do. And none of that was like in my wheelhouse. I was
Mm.
just
It's
like
all
having to
new
think
stuff.
through all the steps.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that that doesn't set anyone up for success,
Mm.
and the food was fine. I was like slightly disappointed in it, but I will also say like don't say that to your friends. Just like
Mm.
keep
Yeah, yeah,
moving
yeah.
forward. Don't be like, "Oh, I really wish that those mushrooms tasted
Mm.
better," or like, "I think the fish was like undercooked," or whatever it was. Just like kind of like just keep moving
Yeah.
because then people if you tell people it doesn't taste good, they're going to think it doesn't taste
Right,
good,
right. That is actually really good, like psychology, I think, of the experience, right? For you, like as a host, you might be kind of stressed out about something, but maybe your guests like they don't know.
They
Maybe that's the best mushroom dish they've ever
Yeah,
had.
and in fact, I saw my friend last night, he was like,
Yeah.
"Wow, those mushrooms were so good," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay," and I think yeah, I think that's people are not coming to your house. If you're hosting your friends at your house, or even
Yeah.
if you're hosting someone that you're nervous to host, they're not expecting a restaurant quality meal.
Right,
They're not
right.
expecting a tasting menu. They're not expecting it to be super fancy, and we recently interviewed, an author named Adam Roberts on our podcast, and he also hosts a lot too, and
Mhm.
he was kind of talking about how he'll make usually makes chocolate chip cookies like a couple days in advance and then puts the dough like on a sheet pan and
Mm.
puts it in his fridge so that when people arrive at his house, he puts them in
Oh,
the
it's already
oven.
pre-prepped, yeah.
And so those kind of tricks, like one of the things I used to make in my younger years was spinach and artichoke dip. That was like something
Oh,
I grew up
yeah.
eating. It was very nostalgic. But when you put that in the oven, like the whole house smells kind of like garlic
Mm.
and cheese. And if you can think about something like that when you're hosting, like
Mm.
someone walks in your house and it smells like biscuits or it smells like
Mm.
chocolate chip cookies or it smells like garlic, then immediately people are like, "Oh wow, I'm so excited to
Yeah,
eat."
it sets like the
It
tone
sets a
for the
tone,
yeah.
exactly.
Is
Yeah.
there so speaking of, like, chocolate chip cookies, are there any, like, summer specific, easy desserts that are good for, like, dinner parties?
Absolutely. One I've been making recently is actually, it's an amaretti cookie, and I don't know
Mm.
if you're familiar with, like, an amaretti cookie, but it's like a almond-scented cookie, it's very
Yeah.
chewy, and it was a recipe that Sonia actually brought to our podcast, and
Mm.
she had experienced it, and she shared a recipe, and then I started making it, and it's pretty easy if you're not really a baker because you don't need a lot of fancy equipment for it.
Yeah.
And, it's egg whites and almond meal. It's actually
Mm.
also gluten-free, which is kind of an extra bonus if
Yeah.
you also eat gluten-free. and then slivered almonds. And the recipe actually called for powdered sugar, and I didn't have any powdered sugar, so I rolled the cookies in just regular granulated
Mm,
sugar. And they're so like chewy and delicious,
mm.
and with just some basic fruit for dessert.
Yeah.
Like people are excited to have that.
Mm.
Another tip that I have if you're making like chocolate chip cookies, this is something I also learned from my podcast host Sonia, is that um, chocolate chips actually have like stabilizers in them to
Oh.
help them not melt, like so
Oh,
that
to keep their form.
they
Yeah,
retain
yeah.
their shape. And so when she was developing her like very famous chocolate chip cookie recipe, she started taking chocolate bars and cutting them up and using that instead of
Oh.
chocolate chips. And she has never shared her chocolate chip cookie recipe, which is like kind of renowned in the Pacific Northwest. Like
Yeah.
people know her for it. But even that tip, like with a Toll House recipe, which I think a lot of people use, like the basic Toll House recipe,
Yeah.
or I have my own recipe too, is I go to Trader Joe's, I buy those Pound Plus bars. Have you ever seen
Yes,
those?
yeah.
And you just use your knife and cut that up and put that into your cookies, and it immediately makes them so much better.
Oh,
Like
that is such a great tip.
yeah, and it's so basic, like, you don't need anything that's the only change that you have to make to the recipe that you already like to use,
Yeah,
so,
I love that. That's such a
yeah.
outside of dessert, are there other kind of like good, easy summer dishes?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite hosting, meals in the summer is barbecue ribs. I feel like
Mm,
that's such a it's a very classic, like, although I if you eat pork, I
yeah.
think, if you eat pork and you eat ribs, like, it's something that you can make a few days ahead of time. I always braise my ribs a couple days ahead of
Mm,
time. I usually make my own barbecue sauce too, which you can also
mm.
do a couple days ahead of time. You can even do that like a month ahead of time and freeze it if you want.
Oh, yeah.
You can also sub in like your favorite barbecue sauce from the grocery store. And it's also a great barbecue recipe. You can then like sauce your ribs and then put them on, sort of heat them up on the grill and get that char. But if you don't have a barbecue, which I didn't have like through most of my 20s, I
Yeah,
didn't have a
yeah.
barbecue at my apartment. And so you can just stick them under the broiler, which will kind of get that sugary,
Like the
barbecue
top.
sauce, like, yeah, the top of
Yeah.
it charred. And it mimics that idea.
Mm.
And, with like a crisp salad, some corn, and like a basic dessert, like that's like a great barbecue, dish to serve to someone if they come to your house.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's a great tip.
Yeah, and you can also take that to the park. Like if you're
Very portable and good.
if you're
Yeah.
meeting friends, it's portable. If you're meeting friends at the park, like you can just throw that on a grill at the park, and no one is sad to have barbecue pork ribs.
Right, yeah.
You know.
I wanna go back to talking a bit about farmers markets. I'm curious to pick your brain a bit about, like, when you're looking for produce, do you have like, I'm horrible with, like, selection. Do you have any tips for, I don't know, whether it's, like, a tomato or some other either fruit or vegetable that we'll see, commonly in farmers markets around the summertime? How to find a good one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would start with like the really basic visual cues,
Mm,
right? So if you're looking at a tomato and you're like, wow, there's like a little bruise in that, like that's probably not one that you want.
mm,
Or if you're looking at corn and you see like that the silks are really golden and they're like sort of juicy, like you can
mm,
tell that that corn has just been picked. But if the silks are, sort of brown and you can
mm.
see that like the husk is dry, like
Yeah, yeah.
then that corn is not at its peak. And
Mm,
so I think that those basic visual cues is like a really great place to start. And
yeah.
I think part of the beauty of going to a farmer's market that's definitely different from going to a grocery store is that you're usually standing in front of the farmer. And
Mm,
if you're not standing in front of the farmer, you're standing in front of someone who works at a farm stand. And
right, right.
so ask them questions
Mm,
and ask them like how do you store your peaches? How do you store your
mm,
apricots? How do you, and I'll tell you the answer, which is like you should store them in your fridge.
mm,
And but one of the other tips that I think is really important is when you go to the cheese store and they say like make sure that you set your cheese out for like 15 to 30
mm.
minutes, you can really enjoy the flavor.
Yeah.
I would suggest that too. If you spend,
Ah.
if you really invest in like really beautiful produce, like beautiful peaches and apricots and cherries, like don't just eat them straight. I mean, you can eat them straight out of the fridge, but you'll taste so much more of the flavor if you let them sit out for a little
Ah,
bit.
okay.
And I think like
Mm,
go early to the farmer's market. You'll always find better parking. It'll be not as hot. You'll have more of, your farmer's attention and, the people who are working at the stands, like they're still
Mm.
fresh in the morning.
Yeah.
They've probably gotten up really early. So
Yeah.
if you come at 1 o'clock in the middle
They're
of the day,
totally
they're just
done. Yeah.
totally done. They're just tired. And, I will say, when I was a new personal chef, one of my clients went away for like a good part of the summer,
Yeah.
and I ended up volunteering at a farm stand. And that was really where I learned so much about produce and, just kind of like chatting with people and,
Mm.
how do you like to cook this? How do you cook your green beans? How do you cook your zucchini? Like people in that space already love food. They're already wanting to cook. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think, being a transplant, not being from Los
Mm.
Angeles, that's the farmers market is the place that I really found my people,
Yeah, you find your
and
community there.
everyone there is really there to like really enjoy the produce. And
Yeah.
we're blessed to have farmers markets year round, but in the summer, almost any place that you're at least in the United States, like there's gonna be at least one farmers market in the
Yeah.
week.
Do you have any favorites here in LA?
I do. I have a couple of favorites. My family, we often go to the Hollywood Farmers Market on Sundays. We do it together as a family. We usually have like a bagel, or
Mm.
my son also gets like a pupusa and he wants to put it in his lunch.
Yeah.
But the Hollywood Market on Sundays, there's a lot of vendors. There's a
Mm.
lot of action. It's really great.
Yeah.
I will say that the Wednesday Santa Monica Farmers Market is my favorite.
Ah.
That was the one I used to go to a lot when I was a chef,
Mm.
and it's very much more of a pure market. It's just produce. There's not a lot of prepared food
Mm.
there. And if you kind of step back and you watch, you will see the menus of Los Angeles being written because you'll
Mm.
watch all the chefs walk around and they'll taste things and they'll test things and
Yeah.
I want a box of this and I want a box of that. And then
Mm.
like a few days later, you'll see it on their menus.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's kind of a magical place, I think. It's like
Yeah.
where Mother Nature and the people who grow your food
Mm.
then show up, and then you watch people really make art with that,
Yeah.
with that produce, and, create spaces, beautiful restaurants where people gather and celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and connect with
Yeah.
each other. And, it's a really special place, I think, the farmers market.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So
Yeah.
now I know, like, because I have personally not been the best at making it to farmers markets, but I always love, like, I would love to,
I'll
get
take
there.
you.
Yeah.
You should come with us. Yeah, you
I
should come
love it.
with us.
Yes.
In Los Angeles, there are farmers markets every single day of the week. So
Oh,
all
okay.
over the city.
Yeah.
And I've been to many of them because clients lived in all these different places. And so sometimes I go to Wednesday, sometimes I go Tuesday, there's a late market in Culver City.
Mm.
Saturday, there's a market in Santa Monica. There's several markets on Sundays. Like, there's markets everywhere. So, I think just going and being open-minded and
Mm.
curious and, recognizing that, in the summer, like you would expect to find tomatoes and green beans and
Yeah.
corn and zucchini and peaches and, and potatoes and, pretty much anything you're going to find at a farmer's market is going to be fresher than what you get at the grocery store.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a great tip.
yeah.
So we've talked a bit about kind of like summer specific like parties or hosting, but for the everyday meal any time of year, I know you have some great tips on for someone who is maybe like meal prepping or ahead, keeping ahead of time and things that will store well in the freezer. Do you have any like favorite recipes or types of foods for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of always making bone broth. That's
Mm.
something that I started making when I was a personal chef. Basically because I was just making a lot of chicken
Yeah.
and I started saving the bones.
Mm.
And, that wasn't, I didn't really grow up. My mom never made bone broth. That wasn't like part of our culture,
Right.
but that's part of many cultures is
Yeah.
like people make bone broth. And so I always keep bone broth in my freezer, and, I always keep tomato soup. My son, like, loves
Love
my
tomato
tomato
soup.
soup,
Yeah.
which is a recipe that's on our Substack too. But in the summer, we're kind of always making salads.
Mm.
And, like I said, every week we release a new salad recipe on our Substack. Sonia and I trade off. And so, she makes a salad and then I make a salad. One that I recently wrote about was the Niswa salad,
Mm.
which I think is a salad that a lot of people understand what that is. It's
Yeah.
potatoes and green beans and greens and Niswa olives. And instead of I found it hard to find actually Niswa olives. And so
Mm.
I use those really bright green Castle, I think you call it Castelvetrano. I forget
Oh.
how you there's sort of like these juicy green olives.
Oh, wow.
And instead of having any meat, I made it a vegetarian
Mm.
version. And so I took some goat cheese and I covered it with olive oil and I added a little bit of garlic and some herbs. And so it's
Mm.
kind of like an herbed, goat cheese that I serve on the salad. But you can make all of that ahead of time. You can boil
Yeah.
your potatoes, you can blanch your green beans,
Mm.
you can cut your cherry tomatoes, you can wash your greens, you can make your vinaigrette. And so I just keep all of those in my fridge. And
Mm.
then, those will last for several days in your fridge.
Yeah.
So that's something I really like to do.
That's a great tip.
And we also make a lot of salads that will sit for a couple of days. There
Mhm.
was a salad from my childhood called the broccoli crunch salad.
Oh,
And did you ever
yes.
eat
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can get it, like, at a deli counter, and
Yeah, yeah.
so I just released a recipe for that, we were eating for, like, a week, and, it's nice to have something like that if you kind of find yourself hungry and you open up your fridge, like,
Yeah.
having a salad ready to go is,
Makes it easier to opt for that versus, like, the chips or cookies or a power bar or whatever.
Exactly, exactly, and it's something that you can make when you have a little bit of time,
Mm.
and I think there's something nice about, like, prepping ahead that it's like you sort of thought of your future self,
Mm.
I think cooking for yourself is self-care,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that, I think maybe brought me to food in the first
Mm.
place, but, I also really love taking care of other people, so for a long time, that was my job, was cooking for other people,
Yeah.
but, I don't personal chef anymore, and one of the practices that we use in my family is I've taught this to a few people, I've taught this at a couple of retreats, but I call it food flow,
Mm.
and my husband and I sit down and we look at like what are we have going on for the week? Like what are the nights maybe there's someone has a meeting or someone has a dinner or my son has a practice and when can we cook and when can we not cook? When
Mm.
don't we have time to cook? And our goal is kind of to cook 3 days a week, which is not even half of the week, right? If you cook 3 days a week, it's like 3 of 7 days.
Yeah.
And but even 2 meals a week that cooking is better than no meals a week cooking at
Mm.
home. And so, you know, cooking at home and sitting down and, connecting with each other, that's an important thing for us. And so we go through and we say like, okay, we're going to cook these 3 days and then it also gives you permission the other days to like order in or
Yeah.
go out to dinner when you have a late meeting or late
Mm.
something late and I think there's also, like, an anticipation of all that. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
"Oh, this is the night that we'll all get to sit down and eat, and this is the night that we'll go get tacos, and
Yeah.
this is the night that we'll go get pizza," and so it really works for us, and I think it's something that I think is like it's a self-care practice that I
Yeah.
think really I would encourage people to do, you
Yeah.
know?
I like that, food flow.
Yes.
Is it like, do you sit down together and kind of plan, or is it something like you're even, like, planning over text, or kind of how is your
We y I will tell you how fancy it is. I sit down with a pencil and a white sheet of paper,
Yeah.
and I write down all the days of the week, and then I write down what our schedule is,
Oh.
and then across from that, it's like, if, for instance, my son has a late practice, like, on Tuesdays, he was having baseball practice till 6 o'clock. Like, that was a night where we would just leave the baseball field and go to dinner
Mhm.
because coming home at 6 and cooking was just not
Not
feasible
realistic,
for, like,
yeah.
his bedtime, and so it's kind of being realistic about what's coming up
Mm.
because I find that a lot of times people would hire me and they would say, like, we get to like 5 o'clock and then we don't know what to eat. Like, we don't know what to do.
Not
And if
thinking
you
ahead.
wait till
Yeah,
5 o'clock when you're already tired, you're
Yeah,
already a
yeah,
little bit
yeah.
hungry, you really don't feel like cooking. And
Yes.
so then it feels like a drag. And
Yeah, yeah.
so, I think if you're someone who can just even if you don't like to cook, if you give yourself 1 day a week to do it, the
Mm.
permission to do it, it's better than just kind of like never planning ahead. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I don't like to be stressed about that,
Yeah.
or wonder like, I don't like to wonder where my next meal is coming from. I wanna
Yeah,
know
yeah.
where my next meal is.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, I love to see how you're doing that with your husband and your son. Do you remember, like, when you were single, did you also kind of have this type of practice where you would plan ahead for the week?
I did. I definitely thought about my meals. I think one of the reasons why I started involving my husband in the practice is that I don't think that one person should be in charge of all the food in the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And, even though I had many, many clients, I was mostly managed by, like, the women in the
Mm.
families, and, I think, like, everybody eats, and
Yeah.
so, and everybody can participate that in their own way even if they don't cook, but what has happened is, after my husband and I have been together for 20-ish years, and he literally never cooked, and
Mm.
in the last, like, year, he started cooking, and he cooks 1
Mm.
day a week, which
Oh,
is 1 day a week that I don't have to cook, which is a
yeah.
kind of amazing, and so I think even if you were in a roommate situation, if you sat down and said, like, or if you just said to your roommate, like, every Tuesday, like, let's have dinner together, let's cook
Mm.
dinner together. There's something that's so connective about that,
Yeah.
and spending time in the kitchen and, you know, cooking for yourself is an act of self-care, cooking
Yeah.
for other people around you is an act of care for them. And I think the world could use a little bit more of all that.
Yeah. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit now about like different food trends. I think especially today with like TikTok and Instagram, there's just like so many like hacks or things that are made popular.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Are there any that you've seen that you really like, and that you use, or and then also are there ones where you're just like, absolutely not, I can't get on that?
Well, I will say that my partner Sonia is like much more of a TikToker than I
Yeah.
am, and she's brought a couple of really viral recipes to
Oh,
our podcast conversation.
yeah.
Two of which I absolutely love. One is called Glow Soup,
Glow
and
soup.
there's this soup recipe that went viral, and it's like a bunch of leeks, so a
Mm.
base of onions basically, and then sweet bell peppers. There's turmeric, and then there's chicken broth, and you basically like blend it all up and you add a little bit of coconut milk. And it's
Oh,
basically like a veggie, it's basically a pureed veggie soup with a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit of coconut milk in it. So it's really satisfying.
Mm.
And the whole idea is that when you eat it, oh, it has carrots in it too. So it's like
Ah,
beta carotene,
and good for your
yeah,
skin and
good for
all
your
that. Yeah.
skin. It makes your skin really glowy. And, at first when she pitched this idea, I was a little skeptical,
Yeah.
but then I made the soup and it's delicious. And it also is, like, really satisfying, and you can take it, like, in your coffee cup, like, because it's a
Mm.
pureed soup,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
even in the afternoon, like, if I was busy working and I forgot to eat lunch, like, I could heat that up and take it with me and on the
Yeah.
road, and so that's a soup that I started making. There's another soup called swamp soup
Swamp soup.
that came from, this developer called Wishbone Kitchen,
Mm.
and it's a really smart recipe, and it's basically like a chicken soup that has, a little bit of rice in it and a lot
Mm.
of greens, and you're kind of making, like, a green juice that you
Mm.
pour into your soup, so it has this, like, really fresh element to it,
Mm.
and you can add, jalapenos if you want it a little bit, like, spicier, or
Yeah.
you can keep it really mild if you're serving it to kids, but, that soup recipe also went viral, so that's something that I've made for my family many times, and we really liked it. Another trend that I really like is, like, this little luxuries trend.
Mm.
This idea that, if you buy yourself like a kind of expensive chocolate bar or like a fancy drink and you take time out of your day to,
Mm.
kind of breathe and enjoy, like, I love that idea. I think that's
Yeah.
such a smart trend that, you know, people talk about like going to Erewhon and how it's so expensive, but
Yeah.
also like it's accessible if you think
Mm.
about it as a treat, right?
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
don't think $25 for a smoothie every day is
Not
attainable
outrageous.
for most people,
Right,
but,
right.
like, if that's, like, your treat for the day and it's makes you feel really good and it
Yeah.
gives you a break, you know, what a wonderful idea, right?
Yeah, I agree. I totally love that as well. And I think, I mean, I've heard about this like small luxuries trend. I think especially alongside the whole like recession indicators or just how a lot of people
Yeah.
right now are being so conscious because of the
Yes.
economy is the way that it is. So being able to, instead of taking maybe if you're not taking like big family vacations, the daily small luxuries of yes, spending $25 on a smoothie at Air One like can be a really great thing for yourself.
Yeah, and I think, I was thinking about this question, and I was never someone who was like a smoker.
Yeah.
But when you hear of people who have stopped smoking, they're like, I
Mm.
just miss that break in the middle of my day, right?
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
idea that you're kind of just like taking a minute to yourself. And
Yeah.
so this to me is like such a healthier version of that, right?
Mm.
It's like you're indulging yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
And to your point is like, if you're not buying a lot of extra clothes or you're not going on a vacation. Like, this is a way to just kind of have this nice little bump in the middle of your day that feels like loving to yourself, you
Yeah.
know? So, is that something, do you ever do that? Do you ever like go get a little snack in the afternoon or get a coffee, like not in the morning?
I love working at different coffee shops around LA. And I used to, because I was like trying to be like financially responsible and then also like manage like not having too much caffeine. But now I
Right.
found myself, because I like to go to maybe two or three during the day, I'll get like two or three matchas that and these are these like really extensive whatever. But I'm like, you know what? It's like it's a nice thing that I will do for myself and that I like
Yeah.
the experience of, and it's like a treat. So
Yeah, and it's an experience. You're not doing it at your house, right?
yes,
Like you're
yeah.
going out and it's nice to do that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this conversation,
Thank you for
Carrie.
having me. I just want to say I really appreciate what you're doing with your podcast. And
Oh,
I think your authentic voice really comes through. I love that you talk about what works and what doesn't. And I think the reason why that resonates for me is like that's where Sonia and I in our podcast, we really share like, here are tips that work for us.
yeah.
Here are the things that we keep doing. Here are the things that we've kind of gotten rid of. And kind of acknowledging like what works for you and then what might work for someone else, and that there's not one prescriptive way to do things. And I
Yes.
think creating space for people to find their own way and like
Mm.
empowering them to do that. I very much hear that in both your solo episodes and when you talk to your guests. So thank you for what you do out in the
Oh,
world. I appreciate it.
thank you so much. I love what you're doing as well. I think that food and nutrition and cooking is so important, not just from like a physical health, level, but also from like a connection with people level. And
Yes.
that really comes through in a lot of the work that you do as well.
Thank you.
So
You
is
should
there
come to the farmers market with me.
Yes, I know. You've inspired me for sure. Is there where can our listeners find you if they want to follow along? You can, go ahead and share a little bit about your podcast and where they can find you online.
Thank you so much. So you can find us on Spotify. We're also on Apple Podcasts, foodfriendspodcast.com, Food Friends Pod on Instagram,
Amazing.
and we hope to see you soon.
Yes. Oh, and your Substack too, right? There are other
Oh, and
places.
yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. We're also on Substack. So we have a free Substack. You can subscribe, get free recipes every week. We also link to all of our show notes and all the recipes that we talk about. So
Amazing.
that's a helpful way to find all the links that we're talking about in our episodes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Living Well or Trying to. If you don't already, please follow or subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. It means so much to me that my new episodes will just pop up in your feed. And if you like what you're hearing and seeing, please leave a rating and review. It means so much for a small content creator like myself in this world that is so saturated now to be able to have some feedback from all of you. As always, I so appreciate you. Thank you for lending me your ears, your eyes, your presence, and your attention, especially in today's world when there are so many other places that you could be giving it to. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I hope to catch you on another episode.